everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Aletha with Ribbons and Zippers, and I'm so glad that you stopped by today. If you are new here, welcome to my channel. I'm so glad you stopped by. I am going to be working on this beautiful dress. This is a dress from a pattern by NewLook, number N6651. It's an awesome pattern. It's very simple. However, it does have a lot of details that allows you to really perfect your sewing skills. So I'm going to go step by step through the pattern to show you just how I made it. This is not for me. The dress is not for me. So I will be doing a little bit of alterations to it. And I think that you're going to like it. So stick with me to the end so that you can see all of the tips and techniques that I do. Okay, let's start by stay stitching 1/4 of an inch from the neck edge of the bodice front, and we're going to do both sections. Next, we're going to work on the bodice back in the same manner. So we're going to stay stitch 1/4 of an inch from the neck edge on the bodice back, and then let's go ahead and stitch the bodice back to the bodice front by stitching the suggested seam allowance, which is 5/8 of an inch according to the pattern. And then you're going to stitch the shoulder and the side seams. Since I'm working on view B, I will be skipping number 3 and number 4. But before I move on, I want you to notice that I finished the raw edges on my shoulder seam and my side seam. And just so you know, I will be finishing all of my raw edges moving forward. And it's a good idea that you do the same. Okay, so moving on, I am going to create an ease stitch at the top of my sleeve from notch to notch. And to do that, I'm going to widen my stitch length to 5 on my machine, which is my longest stitch length. Yours might be a little different. So to create our ease, we're going to sew between the notches at the top of our sleeves, and we are going to make 2 rows. Make sure that those stitches are within the seam allowance. Next, I'm going to stitch the underarm seam 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And again, notice that I went ahead and finished my raw edges on the sleeve as well as the hem, because that's going to make it easy for me to as I move forward. So let's go ahead and make our 5/8 of an inch seam allowance on our underarm seam. Next, we're going to press up our hem, press under 1/4 of an inch on the raw edge, and then we're going to stitch very close to the inner pressed edge so it makes a really nice hem. Now let's attach our sleeve. To do that, turn your sleeve right side out, and then with the bodice wrong side out, make sure that the armhole is towards you. With right sides together, pin the sleeve to the armhole edge with the center small dot at the shoulder seam. Make sure that your dots are matching. So you're going to match your underarm seams, your notches, and all of your dots. Okay? And then pin. Now pull your ease stitch, which is your gathering stitches, so that it distributes the sleeve along the bodice. You want to create a nice evenly distribution and fullness with no puckers. Now baste your armhole and then stitch. You need to make 2 stitches. You want to stitch a regular 5/8 of an inch stitch and then 1/8 of an inch from your first stitch, and then you're going to trim below the notches, and then you're going to press only the seam allowance. Okay, so the next step is to add a casing to the bottom of the bodice. But I will be skipping number 7 and 8 because my client does not like this look. It is a little too bulky for her. So I will not be doing a casing. Instead, I skipped over to number 9, which is applying the pockets to the side edges of the skirt. To do that, I pinned the pockets to the edge of the skirt, right sides to right side. I made sure to match the large dots, and then I stitched along the edge with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Next, press the seam out toward the pocket and then understitch the front pockets. Next, pin the skirt front to the skirt back at the side seams. Make sure to match the large dots. Now you're going to stitch the pockets edges together and the side seams together, making sure to backstitch at the large dot to reinforce the seams. Now clip the back seam allowance at the end of the pocket and press the seam open below the clip. Now press the pocket toward the front and baste 1/4 of an inch from the upper edge. Next, pin the skirt to the lower edge of the bodice. Now remember, my bodice edge does not have the casing, but in any case, I still have to match my notches, and I also need to match the small dots at my side seams. After I matched my notches and my dots, I'm going to stitch the bodice and the skirt together. And then instead of pressing down, I'm going to press up. Now, I am going to close the seam because I do need to use it to house a 1/8 inch elastic. I'm going to sew around the bodice and leave an opening that's going to replace the casing. Now it's time to prepare the facings. We need to attach the facings to the front of the dress, and there are 2 facings, one for the left side and one for the right side. Before we attach the facing, it's important to apply interfacing to the wrong side of each facing because it will give some structure to the dress. I am using lightweight fusible interfacing for this process. Now after applying the interfacing, locate the notched side of the facing because we want to press under 1/4 of an inch on the long unnotched edge. Next, with right sides together and raw edges even, pin the placket to the front edge of the dress and make sure to match the small dots, especially if you've used the casing. Next, stitch in 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Press the seam toward the placket. Now turn the placket to the inside along the fold line and press. Pin the pressed edge 1/8 inch over the seam line and baste in place. Stop about 5 inches from the bottom of the dress. Next, follow the instructions on 17, which explains how to try on your dress, and then mark the depth of your hem. Make sure that the placket is nice and straight. Okay, now once you're done, turn the lower edge of the placket to the outside of the dress. Feel free to mark the placket as well so you'll have a good reference. Now stitch across the placket along the hem marking that you just created. And then trim the placket close to the stitching. You want to trim the garment to within 5/8 of an inch of the inner edge of the placket. Next, turn the placket to the inside of the dress and press. Now you're going to press up the hem along the marking that you created. To form the narrow hem on the lower edge of the dress, just tuck the raw edge under about 1/4 of an inch to meet the crease and press. Then pin and baste the remainder of the placket 1/8 of an inch over the seam, and then go ahead and stitch the hem in place. Before you hem, don't forget to repeat those steps on the other side. Since I'm working on view B, I'm going to skip ahead to number 23. Apply interfacing to one neckband and one collar section. Next, clip the neck edge to the stay stitching. With right sides together, pin the neckband to the neck edge. Placing the inner small dots at the shoulder seams and matching the center back and remaining small dots. Now make sure that the end of the neckband extends 3/8 of an inch beyond the front edge of the dress. Then stitch a 3/8 inch seam. Layer the seam. Press neckband out by pressing the seam toward the neckband. Okay, so before you can attach the collar to the neckband, you need to construct your collar. Place collar pieces right side to right side with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Start stitching along the short side of the collar, beginning at the notched side. Make sure your needle is down when you pivot and continue along the long unnotched side. Pivot and continue to the other short side and stop, leaving the notched edge open. Layer your seams by trimming the interfacing side as close to the stitch as possible. Trim towards the tip of the collar, and with a blunt point turner, push the collar out and press. Machine baste raw edges together. With right sides together and raw edges even, pin the collar with the facing side to the neckband. Make sure to match the center back and double notches and place the end of the collar at large dots. Now, with your longest stitch length, machine baste the collar to the neckband. Next, press under 3/8 of an inch on the single notched edge of the neckband facing. With right sides together, pin the neckband facing to the neckband over the collar. That means make sure that the collar is sandwiched in between the neckband and the neckband facing. Make sure that you match the center back and make sure that the raw edges are even. Stitch front and double notched edge in a 3/8 inch seam allowance and then layer the seam. Also, make sure to notch the curve rather than clip so that you reduce any bulk. Now we're going to turn the neckband facing to the inside and press. Pin the pressed edge of facing over the seam. Place the pins on the outside of the neckband and then stitch very close to all the edges all around the neckband, catching the pressed edge of the facing on the inside, and it should come out looking like this. Okay, so now the last step is to work on the outside of the dress. We're going to stitch in the ditch or the groove of the placket seam. It's important to make sure that you catch the pressed edge of the placket on the inside. For this technique, you can use a regular foot or you can use a stitch in the ditch foot like this one if you have one. It's designed to glide along the groove while the needle goes just in the ditch. When you are all done, remove the basting stitches, make your buttonholes in the right placket, and sew on your buttons on the left placket, and then you are all done. Alright everyone, thank you so much for stopping by. I really hope that you enjoyed watching me sew this beautiful dress, and if you really liked what you saw, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell so that you can be reminded every time I do an awesome video that's just for you. See you in the next video.